Wondering though, and I'm not trying to be
No,
offensive in
no.
any sense, but I've had debates with a lot of blue-haired feminists and these types of
Yeah.
people. And when I talk about my interest in Islam, they bring up the fact that the Prophet Muhammad, he was married to a girl that was underage. What is the response to that? Because I don't know how to respond to that in a debate.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, we've done, I'm part of something called the Sapiens Institute, which is the institute which I co-founded. We've done a three-part series on this question because it's one of the most common questions in the West. Like, why is it that the Prophet Muhammad, married Aisha at the age of 9, or there was intimacy at the age of 9, and so on. And so, the first thing I would say is that if you want a more detailed answer of what I'm about to mention now, you can obviously go and see these. I've done three-part series. The second thing I would say is that, look, I mean, first and foremost, you could technically believe in Islam and not believe that the Prophet ﷺ or the Prophet Muhammad married Aisha at the age of 9. In other words, it's not an article of faith. One must believe that the Prophet Muhammad married, Aisha at the age of 9, or that there was some kind of consummation. I'm not saying this is a red herring that many people try and bring about in order to create some kind of a distraction to the key tenets of Islam. But let's take the historical account, because quite frankly, there are some revisionist accounts, which some people have brought forward today and said, no, she wasn't 9, she was 18, or she was 21, or whatever. Looking at it myself, I don't agree with those accounts. I think that those accounts are not correct. I think it's correct that he married her at the age of 9. That's what happened. And that's something that she mentions herself, in fact, and it's narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari authentically. So the question is why and how? The real answer is, bro, you're kind of alluding to it before, which is that we have social constructs, not the kind that the feminists and the ones on the far left are talking about, which is that they say sex is a social construct, or like, for example, Judith Butler said sex itself, biological sex, the penis, in a sense, is a social construct. We're not talking about that. We do have some social constructs. And ironically, I think the social constructs are those things which cannot be empirically justified. And I think one of those things is the idea of childhood. I'll be totally honest with you and tell you, how do we determine what is a child? I mean, historically, we've always understood the idea of childhood as corresponding with either biological ability or psychological capability, or a combination of both. The ability of somebody to work, or to be domestic, or have effective domesticality, and all these kinds of things. When I looked at the issue from a historical perspective, I started to realize why the West in particular has started to redefine what it means to be a child. And I think I've got the answer. Because, in the 1800s, you'll find that, quite frankly, people were getting married in the United Kingdom at the age of 10 and 12. And in America, all the way down in Delaware, it was actually 9 years old or 7 years old. It was legal to get married at this age. So when did it shift? It actually shifted here in the United Kingdom when 1914, obviously, as you know, 1914 to 1918, there was World War One. And after World War One, there was an infrastructural mess in parts of Western Europe. And the ideas of education started to change. So legislatively, there was a law that was put forward in 1924 or 1925. I cannot remember exactly the year, but it was a law that changed the marriage age from 12 years old to about 16 years old. So in England, where I'm speaking from, the age to get married was 12, and then it changed to 16. Now, you might ask, what is the reason? Actually, funny enough, ironically, once again, part of it was to do with some protesting from the first wave feminists. I looked at some Hansard records, which are basically the records in Parliament and so on. So I was wanting to see what exactly the reason was. Another part of the reason, in my opinion, was the fact that education started to be seen as, or when somebody would finish education, would start to be seen as the appropriate time of when adulthood begins. So in the United Kingdom, for example, I think in America it's very similar. The age until compulsory education is 16 years old. So it's almost as if they're telling us, look, you're not a real man, you're not a real woman, you're not an adult yet until you finish the educational program that we have in place for you. You have to be 16 and then you're an adult then. Now, this is completely alien in the historical landscape. I mean, this has never been how any civilization, almost at any point in time, in 5 to 6,000 years of human civilizational existence, has ever understood what it means to be an adult. Now, I'm not saying, therefore, we should change it and go back to our old days, because it's very difficult now to get a young person of today to do the actions that they were doing yesterday. But what I am saying is that it makes no sense to take these social constructs, which are not based on biological fact. They are merely social constructs, literally things which have been put in place or have been understood to be okay, aesthetically pleasing, relativistic understandings by liberal people after the First World War and Second World War. To be more particular, it became even more pronounced because there was an even bigger mess then, infrastructurally, and then they needed education even more to fix up economies. And so this idea of childhood corroborating or corresponding or being commensurate with educational age, or the end of childhood being when the education ends, became even more prominent. So what I'm saying is that, yes, it did happen according to the most authentic historical account. And no, we don't think there's any problem with it at all. We think that it's just because we have a different idea of what it means to be a child, which can be tracked historically. But now, if the situation has changed, we'd say that the general principle in Islam is, you can do what you kind of want, so long as, I'm not going to say you can do what you want so long as you harm it. You can marry whomever you want to marry, so long as it doesn't cause them harm, physical and psychological. So, for example, if I marry a 100-year-old woman, or a sneaker, if you marry with your tank top a 100-year-old woman, and you get involved with her intimately, she might die. I mean, she might have some kind of health problem. So we would say that, well, if you were to be intimate with a 14-year-old or 13-year-old who's got huge hips and huge breasts and huge body, I mean, quite frankly, we would say it's not going to have the same effect medically. I mean, no one can make the argument. But in these countries where we live in now, one is legal and one is illegal. So, in other words, you can't marry a 100-year-old woman, but you can marry that girl that's you can't be. You're a pedophile if you go for the girl that's got the hips. And once again, pedophilia is very relative, because if you go to Russia, the age of consent is 14, but in England it's 16, and parts of America it's 18, and other parts of America is 18, and other parts of the world is 21. So one man's pedophile is another man's good citizen, liberal actor. So the point of who sets the age is another issue, because it's very arbitrary at this point. But we're not saying, therefore, we should go back to a time where the age is not set. We're not saying any of that stuff. We're just saying that to use this as an argument against the veracity of the truthfulness of the religion of Islam is unsatisfactory, I would say. What do you think about that? And feel free to push back.
I think that's a good explanation. I think 9 is very young. 9 is very young.
Yes, I mean, 9 is very young. Yeah, it's very young to us.
How old was Mohammed at the time? We don't need to stay on this subject, but there's other we could talk. I was just wondering, because in debates, I want to figure out how to continue, because that always comes up, especially from Christians.
I agree.
When the debate comes up, I wanted to see how to navigate that.
Okay. Well, what is young? What does it mean to be young?
To be innocent, to be childlike, and even not even going through puberty, also physically not matured yet.
Okay. Beautiful. Excellent. So you've mentioned some key terms, right? Innocence and puberty, because these are things which are measurable. Now we can start to talk about it. Frankly, we believe that Aisha, at the time, she had gone through puberty. So we actually have evidence of Aisha saying that she had gone through puberty at that time. So that's one aspect. The reason why he didn't marry her before, because she hadn't gone through puberty yet. Now, if you look at the numbers of people that go through puberty at whatever age, you will find a percentage of people even today that go through puberty at the age of 9. So yes, 9 is very young. This is what some of the revisionists